Udi, just a reminder that you can go into the chat, attendee chat. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start. And you can hear me, correct? And you can see the screen, correct? Uja, just to say hello. Okay, Uja, so peace and blessings. So this is one of the ongoing Knumt Nefers, the good associations related to the Arat Sekhem workshop that we had recently, and the Integral Arat Sekhem workshop. So the question was asked relative to RU and karma. So tonight's program, the lecture part will be about Arat Sekhem and RU and karma, or karma. RU is the Kemetic word that in the Eastern tradition is referred to as karma. So once again, we will go ahead and we will establish our sacred area. If you have your tutelary divinity or your altar, you can light your candle, you can have your incense going, and have your tutelary divinity, Sekhem or Sat, established on the throne. And so we're going to start with our chant in Avon. As we do, you can do call and response, or also you can do it on your own rhythm. The main focus of it will be as you inhale, you'll feel that the starts at the base of the spine, where we have the cauldron of the set, start at the base of the spine, and it's going to resonate up in the area of the spinal column. Really, it's resonating through the subtle energy centers, the Sekhem Arat, or the chakras, through the energy centers all the way up through to the 6th and then the 7th energy center at the crown of the head. And so it's going to be like vibrating, resonating, reverberating through the area of the spinal column, the subtle, but also the physical as well, because we know the subtle energy centers and the Sekhem Arat, that they have correlations to the physical spine in the physical body, the Arat Sekhem and the Sekhem Arat. So sit in your back straight, shoulders relax, but a little bit back to open up the chest area. Your hands can rest in your lap comfortably or in your thighs. Deep inhalation. Swelling the belly out like a balloon, expanding the abdomen. Exhale, pulling the abdomen into the spine, pushing all the air out. Inhale, expanding and swelling the belly out like a balloon. Exhale, contracting the abdomen and pulling the belly in towards the spine, pushing all the air out. And now we're going to inhale, fill in the abdomen, continue to inhale a little bit more, fill in the area of the chest, and a one little deeper inhalation breath. Fill in the area of the lungs underneath the shoulders, allowing the shoulders to raise up, and just take a little pause at the moment of the inhalation, natural pause, and then exhalation, exhaling from the shoulders, releasing the chest, and contracting and pulling the spine, or the abdomen into the spine, letting all the air out. Inhale, abdomen, chest, and shoulders. Little pause. Exhale, shoulders, chest, and abdomen. Contracting the abdomen towards the spine. And there's a natural pause there at the exhalation too. In the pause, you experience that silence. Inhale, abdomen, chest, and shoulders. Exhale, shoulders, chest, abdomen, and the natural flow, outflow, and pause. Inhale deeply, and we'll start. Om, peace, peace, peace. Let's have peace. So we'll do our Ma'at prayer. Ma'at, Anku Ma'at. Ma'at is the source of life. Ma'at Nebuten. Ma'at is everywhere you are. Kahena Ma'at. Rise in the morning with Ma'at. Onkhena Ma'at. Live with Ma'at. Ha Sema Ma'at. Let every limb join with Ma'at. Become one with Ma'at. That's up. Ma'at, of course, being the cosmic principle or divinity of righteousness, of justice, of equanimity of mind, of selfless service, of actions done in supreme peace, of non-duality, ethical conscience. And you're welcome to type in more aspects of thought in the chat if you'd like to. Whatever your associate sits in your heart as the most. It isn't. Oh, can you plug it inside? As the most resonating aspect of her in your life, and it may change from day to day. So we will go ahead and continue with our program as we consume pure foods and pure thoughts with pure hands and adore celestial beings, become associated with the wise ones, sages, saints, and prophets, and we make offerings to God that have been divine self. A little enlightenment here, increasing the light. That helps a great deal, actually. So we've established Waja, a set. in your space and ask her to always abide with us and to guide us to become one with her. You saw the throne that the royal personality sits on. And the throne is also associated with Set. When we do the Set throne posture, it's also associated with Goddess Set. And you can see the throne here is a Tutankhamun and how it's fixed with the serpent goddesses, because as we discussed, they're one and the same. And then we'll go through our hymn to the diadem. We'll do a few verses again. Rest Emhetep, rest Sutanyet Urt Emhetep, rest Sutatepti. Awaken, O goddess, without the agitation of duality. Awaken, O you great royal copper goddess, in the calm of contentment. May she have an awakening vision in the peacefulness of non-duality. We'll go to verse 4. Awaken, rest Emhetep, rest Arat Shemalt Emhetep, rest Sutatepti. Awaken, O goddess, without the agitation of duality. Awaken, O serpent, serpent goddess, you who are the goddess of the south. O goddess, be in peace, in the calm of contentment. May she have an awakening vision in the peacefulness of non-duality. And we talked about the goddess of the south, of course, being goddess Nekabet. Rest Emhetep, rest Arat Nahit Emhetep. Resud Atepti, awaken, O goddess, without the agitation of duality. O serpent goddess of the north, be in peace, in the calm of contentment. May she have an awakening vision in the peacefulness of non-duality. In the north, we talked about it being goddess Wajet, also goddess Aset has an association there. Rest Emhetep, rest Renunet Emhetep, resut Hetepti. Awaken, O goddess, without the agitation of duality. O goddess of the harvest, O nurse of souls, as they receive the fruits of their action. O goddess, be in peace, in the calm of contentment. May she have an awakening vision in the peacefulness of non-duality. Rest Emhetep, rest Wajadusert Emhetep, resut Hetepti. Awaken, O goddess, without the agitation of duality. O holy goddess, be in peace in the calm of contentment. May she have an awakening vision in the peacefulness of non-duality. Hetep. We'll just do one verse tonight in chant. The first one, or verse 2 rather. Restem Hetep. Resutanyet urtem hetep, resutapti, restem hetep, resutanyet urtem hetep, resut hetepti, restem hetep, resutanyet urtem hetep, resut hetepti. Restem Hetep, resutanyet urtem hetep, resut hetepti. Hetep. So the question tonight we're going to discuss is from Shem Sekhet Bes Ra, and she had a question, and in her final summation of the question, she in part answered her question. So her question is, are we destined to live out the effects of our past negative are you? Even if we purify and enlighten our heart in the present. I was under the impression that we do suffer consequences of our negative actions despite the fact that we may have more positive are you now. However, I'm thinking the positive that now that our positive are you cancels out the negative impressions for balance. So just one thing I wanted to actually say here that I didn't have in the rest of the discussion. Are we destined to live out the effects of our past? Are you? So if that were the case, we would be, if that were the case, oh, let me do this. So if that were the case, there's so much are you, and probably so much negative are you, that there would be no hope for souls to become enlightened. If we're destined, because in addition to, like, there's a whole storehouse of are you that from past lives that have accumulated, all the are you of ignorance from thousands of past lives. And out of that, only a portion is activated to for this lifetime. So if we actually had to live out all of those to wear them out, that in itself would be probably forever, not eternal, but forever. It'd be just ongoing. So no, the RU, as you're going to see, is related to ignorance. And just like there can be, ignorance is related to darkness, just like there can be darkness in a room for centuries, but when someone walks in with a light, what happens to that darkness? That darkness vanishes away instantaneously. So that is the glory of the mystical teachings and the spiritual mystical path, is that we do have the power to architect our destiny towards enlightenment. So I'll put it back on again. So just a reminder what RU is. From the program we went through this. RU, impressions stored in the ab, in the heart, in the unconscious mind. It relates to current actions. It relates to, it's the residue or the impressions of experiences of actions from earlier today, from earlier in this lifetime, and from actions and feelings from past lifetimes as well. So, and it's the residues of what we would say positive or good feeling, happy type of experiences. And it's a residue of, those are the residues of likes or attachments. And it's a residue of dislikes from negative experiences. So we eat a fruit and we bite into it and it's like really sour and bitter and like, yuck, ugh, horrible. So that dislike is an RU that is created. And that pushes us away from that fruit, and we don't want to have anything to do with it. And then we eat like an apple pie, and that's so good, that's so yummy. So that RU of apple pie goes into our unconscious, and then in our next lifetime we see some apple pies for sale as we're walking by a deli or something, and we see this nice apple pie, and it's like, wow, that looks so delicious, and you have to have a piece of apple pie. So the RU is the residues of the likes, the way we were always like, reacting to something in a positive way or a repulsive way, attracted to it or repulsed by it. And so RU impressions from all the lifetimes, and it's these subtle inclinations are the ones, there is a bunch of them that rise up or that come into effect in this lifetime, and those are the ones that cause a lot of that causes subtle inclinations that direct the personality to certain actions and likes and dislikes, feeling that create the personality, in other words. So egoistic RU, happy, positive actions and feelings are egoistic because they're still based on the duality consciousness, the idea of being an ego personality, this mind-body identification. And identifying with the world of time and space and interacting with it in a way of identification. And it also includes unhappy or traumatic actions and feelings. And especially, like, for example, if you got drunk in a past lifetime, you might never want to go on a ship in this lifetime. Just don't have any reason for it. Nothing bad happened in this lifetime on a ship, but you just, have this fear of being in deep water. So traumatic actions and feelings also become RU. Somebody may have hurt you really badly or even murdered you in a past lifetime. And, you see them in this lifetime, you don't recognize them as that person because they are a different embodiment, you're a different embodiment, but you just are so uncomfortable around them and you just like being around them, or you never want to be alone around them. So these are how the RUs, they operate in day-to-day life. And if you want to see the operation of RU, just turn on Dr. Phil and Iyala Van Zandt and those types of shows, and you'll see all the and actually the news, and look at the world around you and friends and family, and you'll see the different ways RU expresses in all of these states, from dull ways to agitated ways to lucid ways. And then also enlightenment or lucidity from experienced actions and feelings of the past based on like that knowing, like that insightful wisdom or intuitional wisdom or feelings of enlightenment also. So from your spiritual practices of the past lifetime also, those deep feelings and the work that you've done in the past lifetime, that also stays with you. So that's why some people in this lifetime, they don't have to go back and start from scratch, or they may start from scratch and then they escalate very quickly because they already have those RE from their past spiritual and mystical work that they've done in past lifetime that becomes awakened. So we had talked in our programs how from the absolute transcendental eternal consciousness, the eternal light of self, we can refer to as Urwajit in this presentation, or for our Serpent Power program, emanates like a subtle aspect of consciousness that is the undifferentiousness, and that's the unitary consciousness from which creation comes. And then out of that very subtle, and that it can be the Wajet or the Aset, and that is the consciousness that is associated with the technical enlightenment of the sixth energy center. But out of that consciousness emanates the creation, and within creation, the soul and creation is this blend of spirit and matter. So especially we're talking about the individual soul, human beings that incarnate in time and space. They're a blend of spirit and matter. So they have their Wajet consciousness as the essence of who they are. And then also they have this Nekabet consciousness, which also is of the essence of divinity. It comes out of divinity. It's made of that. And but it's disguised in this form as creation, as matter, as the physical body, as objects of creation, as the mind, as the senses. And so spirit gets mixed up with that, because spirit is blended with that. But when that mixing occurs, then the forgetfulness ensues. And that, is expressed in the Assyrian resurrection myth and the Heteru myth. So when spirit essence with unitary consciousness incarnates into creation, thus becoming associated with a particular mind, body, nervous system makeup, that is the lower self and the lower nature. The problem is gets caught up in nature and functions of that lower animal nature, and it becomes limited to the body, mind, and that animal nature, lower self capacity. So whatever the nervous system of the incarnation is, that's what limits it. So when the soul incarnates into the human body, we think that the extent of our mind, which most people think is in the brain, but it's not, but we think the extent of the mind is what our capacities are. So we can do whatever the mind can do, and we can do whatever the physical body is capable of doing, and that's the extent of who we are, quote unquote. So it forgets its true spirit, who we are, who I am, spirit essence, and that is termed mystical ignorance. And people get it, sometimes I think people get a little offended when we use the term ignorance in the spiritual setting, because they associated like, oh, you're stupid, in that way. And yes, you could be mystically ignorant and stupid also, but that's a different thing. Mystical ignorance means that when we talk about ignorance in a mystical setting, it means that referring to the state of forgetfulness of one's true essence. And the ignorance is so deep that even when one is told about it, one cannot easily just go back to being that spirit essence. It has to be a whole process. And that aspect of that mystical ignorance gives rise to egoism, that separation, that I'm here, you're there, we're different. All of these objects around me are different. They're made up of different stuff. They're made up of different elements, so that they are all different. But as we know, we didn't go too much of it in depth in the serpent power aspect of each of the energy centers. The Sefik Bara is associated with a different element. So what does that mean? It means that all the elements also are the essence of consciousness. So even though they seemingly are different, the essence of them is that is consciousness. So egoism causes duality consciousness, and it veils that unitary consciousness of oneness, and therefore it veils the eternal transcendental spirit essence. And so we talked about the goal of mysticism is to unite, which means a sublimation of the duality egoistic vision, which means coming to terms with the understanding that your true essence is the universal transcendental self. That's the real you. And the essence of your true nature is one with everything. As a matter of fact, everything is just you. So that means there's only one being, and that is you. So the essence of creation, the essence of all the objects, the essence of your body, your mind, is that transcendental self, and that is your true nature. And so when you come to that understanding, then you harmonize your physical and your spiritual, and then you have the uniting of those two goddesses into the one unitary consciousness, the undifferentiated consciousness, the third eye opens. And then when the third eye opens, then you have the unitary consciousness expressed in even in creation. So an enlightened sage is not experiencing creation the way an unenlightened person is experiencing creation. An enlightened personality is experiencing creation. An unenlightened person is experiencing creation through the mind and senses, right? Duality, things are different here and there. But an enlightened personality is experiencing creation and everything in creation through this unitary consciousness. They relate to creation in terms of the mind and senses as a tool to relate to creation and relate to things in creation, but their experience of creation is not through the mind and senses. And so things that create our you that are really challenging is that if when we say we want enlightenment, then there's a part of the personality that like resists that and says like, I don't know about that enlightenment thing. And that is the aspect of the soul that involved in the Nekabet aspect of the material more minded. It's caught up in the Nekabet aspect of consciousness, involved in worldly aspects and worldly identification of the what I am. So we may say we want universal love and compassion, but to grow spiritually, we really have to question ourselves and say, yeah, do we want that? In other words, this is my child. Do I want to love my child here as equally as the neighbor's child? Can I do that? can I open my heart to love that neighbor's child, the essence of that neighbor child as equally? And so if we're not able to do that, if we still have those differences and nuances of seeing this thing is better than this and this is more special than this, then we are differentiating, and we can't have oneness if there's differentiation. So this is what we have to start looking at, how we are approaching every aspect of life relative to the different levels of energy centers. For example, if we say we want to go beyond our first energy center, our first Sekhem or chakra, that has to do with fear of death, that has to do with core survival, it has to do with attachment to the body, it has to do with giving thought and to this idea of body is who I am. So I use that example in the Florida program as like celebrating birthdays, and I might have said that also previously. And nothing wrong. So well, what's wrong with celebrating birthdays? You know, it's a practical thing in life. People wish me happy birthday and all of that. But what's wrong with celebrating birthdays is that the celebration is of the physical body. Where's your spiritual day? Where's your celebration of the spiritual day in this time and space? I guess that's supposed to be Sundays when people go to church or something. I don't know. But there's just this focus in this culture, especially in the body and celebrating the body. So, it can be celebrated in a mystical way as the day your soul incarnated into this time and space to continue its spiritual journey to enlightenment. And on that day, like an aspirant would actually focus and maybe do something, maybe do a longer meditation, rather than going to a party and get into agitation and incite the egoism and the sense of like, hey, yeah, you're there, me here, we're having fun and all this stuff. Would do something quiet to nurture their spiritual enlightenment. So the tendency to do this or to move towards it or not to, and the challenges you're faced with these types of struggles is what is moving you towards unitary consciousness. And it is a struggle, right? In the Assyrian resurrection, it's expressed as the battle between Heru and Set. Heru being the aspirant who wants to attain enlightenment, and Set being that Nekabet type of consciousness that's tied up in the world of time and space that like, no, I don't want to. And even like spiritual celibacy, and I said spiritual celibacy, mystical, because it does not necessarily imply physical celibacy, although that might be part of the process of getting there. That implies that if there's only one thing, then one thing can't, engage in sex with itself, or it won't, and actually in one of the creation myths, it talks about creation comes forth by the divine masturbating and bringing forth seed out of himself. So that idea of spiritual celibacy is just that there's one thing. So if there's one thing and it's all me and that's all there is, then who is there to join with or to unite with or anything like that? There's just oneness. So in that state of unitary consciousness, there's no inner need to unite with anything. And there's no need to get pleasure through sex because you're enjoying that unitary consciousness, which is the source of, even the pleasure that comes from sex. And that is like a much lesser type of pleasure is from sex as compared to unitary consciousness. So all of that changes. It'll change your relationship. It'll start to shift relationships, and affect those aspects of your life. And I said mystical celibacy because maybe you might still be in a relationship as a sage, and maybe you may have sex with your partner still at times or something to maintain a family type of relationship if your partner is not at that level. There's the idea is that you are transcending, and whatever your actions are in time and space, they don't have any hold on you. But you don't have a desire to do it for your happiness. And in that aspect, the Nekabet consciousness is related to, it becomes sublimated. The egoistic aspect of the Nekabet consciousness becomes sublimated, and Nekabet can lead you then to eternity because you're no longer, there's nothing wrong with the physical body. You're just not identifying with it as yourself. you're understanding the essence of the body, of everything is the oneness of eternity also. So you're always in eternity, as depicted by her holding the shems there. So there's the proverb, the Kemetic proverb, the Kemetic wisdom teaching. If you wish to be as a master, you must love impersonally, caring for all equally. Wants must yield to self-control. Live as though you have achieved and acquired everything you need, and also as if you have lost everything, even the thing or person you might love the most, for material things are transitory. So this is a good proverb to reflect on, to determine, to have as a constant reflection, because I think it summarizes the essence of moving towards unitary consciousness. So it's like a good reminder. And then a good reminder, it's also good to come back to when things are not going right, when things are bugging you, they're troubling you, to come back to that reflection and see, like, well, yeah, my problem is that I'm not caring for all equally. I'm singling out this one or two persons. Yeah, I'm kind of overindulgent in this aspect of my life. Yeah, I can't even think of losing this person that I love the most. So, those are the things to reflect on and to see, keep reminding yourself of it. So Aryu is based on this ignorance of the self. So when I say the self, the Uraja, the transcendental self, and we call that Kemenin, and that's ignorance. And it's a mystic ignorance or a mystical forgetfulness of the true eternal light of the transcendental divine essence. So this is good. So Aryu can be associated with that ignorance of the self, that forgetfulness. So if you think of it in those terms, then if Aryu is based on ignorance, when enlightenment occurs, when Nahast occurs, that's the mystic remembrance of the self, then that's the end of Aryu. There's no more impressions of likes and dislikes, because you're in that space of oneness. And if there's oneness, then there's nothing to like or dislike. Externally, in practical way, of course, you're going to differentiate in certain, different items and different objects. And you may have, according to your taste buds, according to the Nekhabet aspect of your personality, you can have likes and dislikes for certain foods and all that. But it's not going into your mind as yuck, yuckapoo. This is horrible. This is something different from me. It's just you're not internalizing that it's something so bad, and it's like making that big egoistic impression about it. It's just a matter of like the car has red paint, the car has blue paint. To the car, it doesn't matter what color paint it has, but it needs a paint job. So you give it a paint job, and maybe it has red paint or blue paint. So you're still going to have certain preferences based on the Aryu that's operating, but it's not making you happy from a spiritual, mystical perspective of abiding happiness. So if you're all there is, who or what is there to like or dislike? And we talked about that, the oneness of the Sefik Vara, chakra number 6. There's no likes, there's no dislikes, and there's also no fear of death, because there's eternity. There's the eternal self that one is identifying with, that has been reclaimed. So as we said, the portion of Aryu already in operation will continue in enlightenment, but you're not creating any new Aryu. Because once you know the self, once you know your true essence, once there's no more ignorance, you can't become ignorant again. You can't unknow the self. So there's no more Aryu. There's no more egoistic impressions, because there's no more egoism. So even as you engage in actions, so you can have an enlightened person doing something and an unenlightened person doing something, and one is building up Aryu and the other is not. Because the enlightened person has no attachments to the actions or the fruits of their actions to the outcome. So this ignorance or forgetfulness or kemen of the self is the seed of perpetuating, or the perpetuation of Aryu. And we had this in the workshop, how it becomes a cycle of RU. And I think in one of the conferences, Sebama had expressed it as like the Shetty calculator, and talked about how many chants you would have to do to overcome certain, the RU in the unconscious mind. Like if you were just going to do the chant, how many chants of the spiritual chants you would do to overcome the RU. And that's one of the ways to overcome the RU. So this cycle of RU where you have these seeds of impression in the unconscious mind, and then they give rise to subtle desires and tendencies and inclinations and impulses and urges, and some of the seeds are activated. They become your thoughts, like just subtle desires in the thoughts, and then they become more concretized thoughts, and then they become conscious desires, and then that spurs you into action, and you're taking actions based on those desires, and then you're creating more RU. And then all types of experiences. This goes over lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes of pleasure and pain. And then, more RU is created, more seeds, and we'll see it in a different depiction. So I did it in terms of a fruit tree that has lots of seeds. I realize I have a corn, but I don't have a corn tree. I didn't change that. I had a different seed here. But anyway, we'll just take the corn to represent the seed. So the seed of ignorance gives rise to duality consciousness, to egoism. So ignorance of the self allows one to get caught up in creation, and then once the mind is caught up in creation, then there's this separation, and there's this duality, there's this forgetfulness, and then there's this I'm here, you're there, and there's this individuality, and there's this distinction of me versus you, or me versus any other objects in creation. So there's really something other than me. And the me is referring to this mind, physical body complex. Duality consciousness, this egoism, then gives rise to likes and dislikes and fear of death, because now we are surrounded by things, and some things we're going to like, and some things we're not going to like, and then some good things are going to happen to us and we're going to be happy about, and then some bad things are going to be happen to us and we're going to be very unhappy about. And then there's this now physicality where I identified it, which is a very delicate aspect. It could fall and slip in a banana peel and hit its head, and then what happens? The life is drained out of it. So there's death that occurs. You can cut your wrist, or chopping an avocado, just slice your hand, bleed, have to go to the hospital, you have anesthesia, you're afraid of anesthesia because you don't know if you're going to come back from it or if you'll die, So there's this fear of death, fear of, and this craving or desire to preserve the physical body and the physical life and longevity and all of that. And then out of that comes like this whole idea of lineage and having children and to continue your lineage. There's an animalistic aspect of preservation of the species, but also humans have topped that up with, now we have to have children, because if they live, our name will carry on, and that in a way is tied into that fear of death, because we can't determine that when we die, then everything relative to us dies. We have to have something that somehow lives on through us, and the name that lives on through us, and we feel somehow we're living on through that personality, when really we're not. So egoism, identification with the mind body is me, gives rise to these more RU, impressions of like, dislikes, and fear of death. And then they give rise to a whole slew of other RU. So they give rise to, anger, more RU related to impressions of anger, hatred, greed, envy, jealousy, pride, insecurity, etc., etc. And so I guess this is what Sebama was referring to with the Shetty calculator, the same concept for those who were at the conference. This is you get an exponential increase, what's called a multiplication of karmas, or multiplication of RU that occurs in the ab. Because you have one seed that bears a fruit tree, and then all of those trees, they sprout more RU, and then each of those seeds of RU then become like trees of RU, and then they sprout more, and then they grow, they bear fruit, the fruit drops, so it becomes like this perpetuating and this expansion. So that's why if you were going to have to live out all of this RU from lifetimes, what I've shown here in this scene is maybe just even one day in a person. This is how much RU is being perpetuated, multiplied exponentially. So if you have to live out all of this RU, there would never be any end to egoistic, ignorant life. So the conundrum of RU is solved by undergoing the process of reducing ignorance. Since RU is associated with ignorance, if you reduce ignorance of your transcendental nature, then that RU is going to be reduced also and to be solved. And then when you completely remove the ignorance, then the RU is completely solved. So of course, this is the process of integral Shetty, the mystical spiritual tradition. And so these are possible intervention points used in the mystical disciplines. If possible intervention with meditation, you can destroy the seeds of impressions. Through Ma'at and devotion and wisdom, those Shetty disciplines, you can intervene with the thoughts and the conscious desires as they're expressing. You can intervene there with the willpower and all of that. Also, meditation will help here with willpower. Possible intervention with Ma'at Ari Himatep, righteous actions done in peace of non-duality when you're engaging in actions in time and space. So the Shetty disciplines do intervene and can serve as points to break this cycle, break it up, disrupt it, change it. So then the Shetty disciplines serve as a pruning process that kind of thin out the RU. So you have this like huge big tree, and you may not be able to easily get to the root, so you start pruning the branches. And the pruning of the tree relates to that aspect of the integral disciplines, practicing kakav, dispassion, utilizing your ampu and your mat aspect, that your discriminative mind, knowing right from wrong, and also your Jehuti purified intellect, knowing real from unreal, truth from untruth, engaging in Knumt Nefer, listening, reflecting, and meditating the teachings over and over again, studying the teachings over and over again. Many times people think that, oh, I already heard that, I know that already. I don't have to go to the Shetty or the Knumt Nefer, because again, and that is just the egoistic of the personality talking, because each day that same egoistic aspect of the personality engages in eating physical food day after day, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, sometimes 5 times a day, eating physical food. And so too, the mind also needs to consume ongoing, daily, multiple times a day, possible like a ongoing spiritual food as well, mystical food. The virtues of the initiates, and Ari. We can go over the virtues of the initiates perhaps in another session. Since we've referenced them a few times. And Ari and mental equanimity, and then we talked about Kent, spiritual valor, and Nek, spiritual strength. The spiritual strength is related to the Sekhem energy. That is an aspect or an outflow of the power of the Sekhem energy when you have the spiritual strength that flows through the mind. And of course, Ma'at is the foundation for the total overhaul of your At, the gross impurities of the mind. The stuff that's been swept under the rugs, the precepts of Ma'at allows you to start cleaning out those cockroaches of lies and deceptions and anger and loss of temper and wishing people bad and all of that. And yes, it does take a strong disciple to rule over the mountainous thoughts and constantly go to the essence of the meaning. As complexity increases, thus will appear decadence and challenge and go through revealed. So people come into the teachings and then they say doing all the disciplines actually has to make, this is like something we hear and you will hear, makes their life worse. It's like they'll call and they say like, since I've been doing the teachings, like things are really intense. Seems my life has gotten worse. And that's not anything the teachings particularly have done. It's because you have taken it upon yourself to start lifting up underneath the rug of all the things you've kind of, the aspects of the personality that you've kind of swept under the rug and not dealt with. And now you're lifting up the rug and cleaning some of those aspects out. You're facing them. So they're coming into, and this is going through the unconscious, but you've said this is what you want to do. So now they're starting to present themselves to you. The unconscious is leading you to situations where to realize like, wow. I remember when we had the foster children, one aspect that came up is like, and then getting into the teachings of that time, was the aspect of lying. That because for business professional reasons, we like, you know, not like lie blatantly, but for example, I was on call all the time and I needed a break, but I didn't want to. I was attached and I didn't want any animals to suffer. So I was not getting a break and I really needed a break for my physical being. So one day someone called and so I told my receptionist to tell them like that I've already left, to try to call the other veterinarians on the island. And then if they cannot find anyone, call back and she will do her best to try to locate me. And I was like right there. And so I had the children there. Well, the children weren't there actually, but at the time I had the children. And then it's like, I remember like at that moment going, okay, here I am telling them not to lie, but here I am doing this little, you know, yes, it was a nuanced lie. You know, I wasn't, I was going to, if the pet needed help and couldn't find any other ones, but it was a habit the other veterinarians had of not answering their pagers. And then I would be the one to get the call, and they weren't even my clients, they were their clients. So, but it just brought to my attention. It's like in that moment, it's like, oh, okay. And so this is how the RU will start to come up for you, because you've said you wanted to go clean out what's there. And so it can feel overwhelming at times, but this is the movement that you are engaging in. And this is the work that has to be done. So the resolute will, those who give you body furnish it with weakness, but the all who gave you the soul armed you with resolution. Employ it and you are wise, and be wise and you are happy. So this means you have the capacity to overcome these impediments, because you're the one that built those mountains, and so now you're the one that's actually going to take down the mountain of the egoistic RU that's there. So we get to work with the pruning. So there's an external process of Shedi, which is the informal meditation as we refer to it. And it includes the Jet Netru postures, the working with the breath, the Ma'at precepts, the 42 precepts of righteous actions, or what not to do to lighten your heart, and the virtues of the initiates, and other precepts that tell you what to do, what good actions to do. And the Ma'at Ari Matep, a way to engage in actions, so in the peacefulness of non-duality and devotion to the divine, and Nefer, of listening to the teachings and studying with the teachings again and again. Food for the mind, food for the soul. And then right, so that's the external. And then there's an internal process of Shedi, which is still relates to Ma'at, because there is a higher aspect of Ma'at associated with Lord Jehuti, who in the form of the highly purified intellect, that is also the aspect of cosmic mind, which relates to the sixth energy center and Ma'at. And Wajet Aset, because if you remember, Ma'at is also associated with Wajet. So Ma'at is a part of that. And if you remember, I think I have an image of it where Ma'at was holding the sixth energy center. So also really profound meditation. So the listening part is part of the external process, and then the when you get into a deeper, profound meditation, reflection and meditation on the teachings, now you're internal, that's the internalized aspect of it. And then also the formal meditation, especially when you're doing the meditation, the super consciousness steps within it. So this is just a reminder that the Wachti goddesses, the serpent power goddesses, are related to also goddess Ma'at. And we see Ma'at here holding the Sekhem, the sixth energy center or chakra. And that's the energy center of enlightened consciousness. So oftentimes we think of Ma'at, we think of her because we know she has a big part in the first three energy centers, but also she has a part in leading you to attain spiritual enlightenment as well too. In the upper four as well, energy centers, and specifically 6. So Ma'at, you bring in the good stuff based on the Knumt, the I am, the absolute self. That's the really, really good stuff. And you do the Ma'at, Ari, and Hatep actions based in this reflection of I am the absolute self, without looking for fruits of actions or outcomes to be happy or unhappy. And then you're blocking the bad stuff from coming in. Again, that relates to the Ma'at precepts as well. And the bad stuff also is not getting caught up in likes and dislikes in a internalized way, just as a superficial preferences of the personality, but not in a detestable way or a hateful way. So you stop that from coming in, and you clean out and you dump out and you destroy the bad stuff based in egoism. I am the personality. You get rid of I am the ego personality, so you sublimate all of that, and you let all of the egoistic aspects of the personality go. So you clean it out. And then yes, you do transform your ab. So the negative impurities, because as you get the insights into your true essence, the insights into the spiritual aspect, those insights, those can negate and remove, because an insight is like, so you have, it's like a misconception that now you understand. So it's like, oh, I get that. It's like something happened. You thought one thing and then somebody said, oh, no, it's this way. And you go, oh. So the minute you get an insight, a misunderstanding, or an aspect of the ignorance gets released. So doing the positive, increasing your understanding of your true essence, all of that helps to clean out the negative, sublimate negative, transform negative. And the energy of the negative is released and can be utilized by the positive. So your personality becomes filled with these virtues of peace, of compassion, of patience, of calmness, of serenity. It becomes like a fragrant bouquet of flowers. And you feel it. You feel light. You feel your heart is lighter. And so positive RU does mitigate negative RU also. So even in the expression of it in like the physical time and space world, some RU is mitigated. In other words, if the RU was such that you were going to get in a car accident and break your leg, by practicing your spiritual study, you, instead of having that experience in physical time and space, you might have it as a dream. So in the dream, you get in the accident, you break your leg, you're in pain, you're suffering, oh, it hurts. But then you wake up in the morning, you go like, oh, wow, that was only a dream. So you experience it in the subtle plane, but you don't have to experience it in the physical plane where it would have been more complicated and more pain and more suffering and all of that. So yes, the positive RU does mitigate the negative RU. Not all of it, but and it's a mystical process how it occurs, but that does happen. And then when the RU is thinned out sufficiently, then this allows access to the root of egoism so it can be uprooted. And the root of egoism is that ignorance of the self, that Kemen we talked about. So this lightening the load of RU by getting rid of the negative, putting in positive, it thins out the RU so that your heart becomes lighter and lighter. And then that allows you to, and then you're experiencing expansion in consciousness, you're experiencing the rising of the serpent power of energy, and then that allows you to be able to get to the root seed, with the root seed, which is ignorance. And we talked about this transformation occurs in Ankaru without words when the serpent is motionless. So also something else changes. The meaning of Aryu itself changes, because whereas initially Aryus looked at adversity or prosperity, like, so if something bad happens, oh, like that must be my bad Aryu. People say that a lot. Oh, it's my bad karma. Oh, this is my bad karma manifesting. And they look at it in terms of good and bad, like whenever a situation occurs to one. And they look at it like, oh, this must be my bad karma fructifying. But when you develop a more mature understanding of Aryu, it's more looked at, this is revealing like an area of spiritual ignorance, because remember, Aryu is tied to spiritual ignorance. And so if it's revealing spiritual ignorance, then it's really telling you, I call it your things to do list. And it's telling you what you need to do to not be ignorant. So what you have to do to attain unitary consciousness, to attain enlightenment. So if you're able to understand that, then you understand that it's actually the Aryu that is unfolding, regardless if from practical world it may be challenging, adverse, or prosperous, then your mind actually changes in the way it responds to it. When there's adverse Aryu, you bear down, and you reflect, and you use all your spiritual tools to get through it, because you understand that in that you're going to get next spiritual strength from going through that, and you become this Kent personality, this valorous personality. And when there's prosperous situation, when things are going well for you, then you're going to utilize that time to intensify your Shedi. You're not going to go out drinking and hanging out or partying because things are going so well. You're not going to go celebrate. You're going to actually like, wow, I don't have these responsibilities and things are going well with my job. I have no worries here. I have, like, everything is flowing easily. So you're going to use that time to intensify your Shedi. And so Aryu then becomes, as I said, your mystical evolution list of things to do, because it's related to spiritual ignorance, but also it's your blind spot. Because the reason that ignorance is sustained in itself from lifetime to lifetime, because it's somehow you're not able to see sometimes the Aryu as being Aryu. And so this is where, like, listening to the teachings, having spiritual teachers that you're working with, going through the teachings, needing it, that's where that's helpful, because then it helps to alert you to this aspect of the way the Aryu is unfolding, so you can start to recognize it and to see how you need to move it into a more unitary mystical way. So when Aryu changes, then Aryu is not viewed as punishment or something bad, but as part of the spiritual evolutionary process. Then adversity really becomes defined as things that take you away from your mystical process, things that moves you away from your contemplation or your reflection or your practices to lead yourself to attain transcendental enlightenment. That's really adversity. So when the mind gets caught up in dejection, or if it starts partying and it forgets, it gets caught up in the egoistic aspect of life, that's what adversity is. And then prosperity is that which leads the mind to focus intensely on a mystical process, movement towards your transcendental self-enlightenment. So what to someone in an amystical culture or from an enlightened personality may say, like, oh man, that's like really, you're going through a really difficult time, that's really hard. That may be your most prosperous aspect, because maybe in that difficulty you really have to utilize your tools. You have to turn your mind to the divine. You're praying all the time. You're saying, even if you're just saying, please help me, divine, please help me, God, that is still a level of turning the mind to the divine, as opposed to going into the world and getting the drink. I'm like, oh my God, my life is so horrible. Let me take a drink. I can't deal with it. Let me take these drugs. I can't deal with it. So adversity and prosperity, as it manifests in physical way, is not seen by an aspirant in terms of good and bad, and I'm being punished or any of these things. It's just seen as like prosperity. Let me get moving in my spiritual discipline. And adversity, okay, let me work with this through my spiritual tools of the integral Shetty process and work through this process. So the seed of ignorance is burnt up by the fire of intuitional realization or enlightenment. And then, as we said, there's no more are you, because there's no more ignorance. And one of the sages equates it with like a popcorn popping. So it becomes like roasted. So it's there, but it cannot germinate and it cannot give rise to more trees that are going to bear more seeds. They're going to bear more trees. They're going to bear more seeds. That process ends because the ignorance ends. So as you shift more to the unitary consciousness of each energy center, you reduce in egoism, duality consciousness. As you become established in each center, you're removing egoism and moving towards spiritual enlightenment more effectively. As you achieve unitary consciousness at each of the centers successively, and you raise up to the Sefik Bara, or the chakra number 7, then you attain unitary consciousness, you become enlightened, and there's no more are you. I think I have it a little bit later. You still continue to have a body, but you don't have, you're not going to be reincarnated. And I said your consciousness is unitary. You're not experiencing your consciousness through the mind and the senses. You're experiencing it through that unitary state that transcends the mind and senses. And you relate to practical reality through the mind and the senses. So correct. So as some segment you're saying, like as you progress through from being a regular person to a striving aspirant, this is going unitary all the time, from the dull mind, high egoistic mind, to the lesser egoistic mind, the agitated mind, still duality consciousness, to the advanced and aspirant, now more of a lucid mind, a lower egoistic mind, duality consciousness. The RU is, and then to the enlightened consciousness. Here it's this: as you're becoming more unitary, as you're growing spiritually, your RU is changing. You're changing out the negative in terms of egoistic impressions for the positive, which in this term would be more unitary type. They're still egoistic, but they're lesser egoistic and lesser egoistic and lesser egoistic, and becoming more one-pointed, more unitary. So again, listening to the teachings again and again, food for the mind daily, just like food for the body's daily, reflecting on the teachings, meditating on the teachings, practicing this fashion, practicing on ongoing spiritual process, not taking breaks, being persistent and not like getting dissuaded. And that's the hard part. It's easy to say, but that's really the hard part. That's the challenge of spiritual practice. And this is what actually makes it or breaks it as far as making this movement here. How much dispassion you can apply. Dispassion meaning turning away from things that are not leading you directly to enlightenment, and turn into those things that are leading you to enlightenment, which is what you say you want to have. So if that's what you say you want, then you have to realize that you've set in motion a certain trajectory of your unfoldment of your RU from your unconscious mind to express for you to be able to deal with. And if you don't want enlightenment, then it's better to say like, okay, I don't want enlightenment. I just stay in this Nekabet world and, go through my ups and downs, my pleasure and my pain, which is a slower path. You're still going to have to practice these at some point in time, but at least that way your unconscious mind will kind of close down a little bit, put things back underneath the rug, sweep a few things back there, close the doors on the garbage and the trash there. And your life can settle back into this illusion, egoistic world. But if you're coming to spirituality and mysticism, it's because you somehow said like, no, this is not like acceptable anymore. I don't want this. You can't just come to mystical spirituality and say, oh, I just want to be more spiritual, because then you can do that without mystical spirituality, and that would be a nicer, easier life for oneself, because then one can actually continue to be an egoistic personality and then just practice some spiritual disciplines, feel the peace of meditation, feel the expansion from being a good personality and being a righteous and virtuous personality. You can just do those things and be a good person and, feel pretty good in the world and have a fairly good life. You can see that. But if you want enlightenment, then you're saying that I want the rug to be lifted. I want the stuff that I need to deal with to come out. And this is why you don't have to do past life regressions too, because the RU, and the seeds of RU are kind of the same. It's all coming out: likes and dislikes, fear of death, ignorance of self. Those are the basic aspects, seeds of RU, out of which everything else flows. So in each lifetime, it's the same things you're dealing with. It's just all the expressions. You can look at what everybody's doing, and they're acting in either because of attachments or hatred. They're acting because like they're afraid of dying, so they have to preserve themselves. So they have to hate other people because you're gonna take my job and take my food and take my life. So it's all related to those basic seeds. And so once we realize that, then we don't, we can prune a little bit, but then we also have to start working at the root a little bit at the same time. We prune enough to get to the root, and then we keep pruning, and then we keep chopping, trying to uproot it at the same time, trying to get rid of that ignorance of the self. Because the tree, if we only work at pruning, then it will just keep growing back, growing back, growing back. So we have to work also at uprooting the ignorance altogether. This one is has a little issue showing up. So Sefik Arat, duality to unitary consciousness. So you have to sufficiently make these transformations, understanding what you must work towards is very important. You may not be at the level of an advanced aspirant. Maybe you're a regular person getting into striving part, but still you have to know what the higher expression is that you're working towards, because if you don't accept that higher expression you're working towards, regardless of where you are now, if there's like fear and anxiety and insecurity because maybe you're involved in relationships, or maybe you have children, and you don't quite know how to practice a dispassion with your children and love everybody equally and all these things. So if maybe all of that is there, then it presents like kind of a block, and that's the RU that has to be dealt with. But if you do the integral Shetty and continue to go through the teachings, listen over and over again, then you will have more of a transitional type of experience. It occurs in degrees over time. So you're not all going to try to become enlightenment in one day, because it's not possible. So wherever you are, you do have to know the destination, so you can know how you have to shift and become unitary in each and every action and thought as you go along each and every day, even though you may not be there yet. So everyone, you can start thinking of everyone in the world as your sen and your senti, your brother or your sister, coming from the same Urwaja, mother, father, as your mystical family. And you can start thinking in terms of mystical incest. And this is what I meant by mystical celibacy, because if everybody's essence has the same mother, father, supreme divinity, then in a way you can think of, if you're engaging in relationships with another person, then from a mystical perspective, that is a mystical incest. And so the reason I bring this up also, because when people misunderstand the ancient Egyptian expression of like, oh, Asar, he married his sister. Oh, and then they say this about the ancient Egyptian tradition and religion, that they, practice incest and they married each other, and all of these things. And because the gods and goddesses they all came from the Supreme Being as brothers and sisters. And then all of a sudden, they're marrying each other. And the idea is, yes, in time and space, in practical world, there's the differences that ensue, and then people form relationships and get into marriages and things like that. But from the mystical perspective, it's all one. So that would be seen as mystical incest. But in physical time and space reality, there's different, that's based on genetics, and that's based on DNA and those types of relationships, and that's not the same thing. This is something different. And we talked about the mystical masturbation, that even that's one of the creation myths, that the divine masturbated to bring forth creation, because if he's the only one, then there's no one to have sex with. So all of this changes your desires, cravings, addictions, and engaging in objects to be happy. I realized that I may have to leave. We'll start the meditation, and then you can continue the meditation your own. So I'll finish this, and then I'll officially close it out. But after I close it out, we'll do the meditation, and then I'll leave you to do the meditation. We'll start it together, and then on your own, and then conclude at whatever time you want to conclude relative to yourself. This is just another way to say the same thing. So I'll go through this pretty fast. You are the transcendental divine self, the eternal light. We talked about creation comes forth from this transcendental eternal light. You bring forth creation because you're that transcendental light. You bring forth every object in creation because you are that transcendental light from which everything emanates. And we talk about how in the human beings, when you bring forth the human beings, how human beings have these three bodies, main bodies. And we talked about the transcendental divine self, how is the true essence. And when a human being is coming into this incarnation now, related to our again, there's a destination assignment. Okay, you're going to incarnate in Earth. So I'm using that because here we all are. So that's an aspect of the fixed aspect of you in this lifetime, right? They're already born in Earth. You can't like unborn and go to another planet. So that's a fixed aspect of your you. That's your Earthling. And okay, you're going to come in as a human being because you can come in as a rat, a roach, a fly, a bird. But okay, you're going to come in as a human being. So that's another fixed aspect of the you in this lifetime, that you incarnated as a human being on Earth. Those are fixed aspects. You cannot change those in this lifetime. You can shift for future lifetimes, but for this life. So since you're going to come in as a human being, you're going to get fitted with human clothing. You can get fitted with your inner layers, your skeleton, your organs. But you are this eternal light, but you're getting fitted with this human clothing. And if you remember the last program we talked about the layering the clothing on top of this eternal light, and then forgetting about the eternal light. So you're going to get fitted with human clothing, your muscle, your skin layers. And then based on your a certain gender is selected, you got a gender assignment. You're this eternal light, but now you're getting this gender assignment. So these, again, are aspects of a fixed you in this lifetime. You're born as a male or a female, or, there are variations in hermaphrodite and all these things that you can be born. But generally, whatever you're born as, that's your fixed you for this lifetime. And then you're going to get an assignment of, this lifetime you're going to be born as, this particular ethnicity. So you have this gender assignment, you have this ethnicity assignment, and that's going to be, again, a fixed aspect. So depending on all of those factors, the male, female, human, on Earth, gender, your RU is going to have its mystical rearrangement and determination. Meskin is going to decide, okay, this is the family for you. You're going to be born into this family. So those are fixed aspects of the RU. But your mind is different. The human mind is different. And so to return to your true self, your transcendental self, all of those layers that were just layered onto you, those identification related to your human mind body complex, that all has to be removed. All of that has to be erased. All of that has to be sublimated and transcended, because that's the essence of who you are is a light, not all of those things, not all of those layers. So these are a couple of proverbs. It says the mind can be transformed from dull to agitated. Oh, sorry. So I'm saying the mind can be transformed from dull to agitated to lucid, and then it can be transcended in the enlightened stage. Thus, you are the architect of your destiny. So even though you have certain aspects of your are you fixed, the mind is something different. It can be moved from dull state to agitated state to lucid state and transcended if one is involved in the mystical teachings. And so these are two Kemetic proverbs on the mind. It says, mind as matter may be transmuted from state to state, degree to degree, condition to condition, pole to pole, vibration to vibration. Transmutation is a mental art. So, and this is what the integral Shedi is all about. It's about transforming the mind and then transcending the mind. And therefore, yes, it's going to transform the RU. This is essentially what we're saying, and then transcend the RU. And we already did the, I think we already did this one. Yes. So this is another chart that I made. The attendees in Atlanta did not see this because I made it before the one in Florida. So we will. I think I'll have a separate program just for this, and it actually shows how depicts. It's relative, but it just gives an idea of how the integral Shedi disciplines, how it brings how it raises the serpent power, how it raises the serpent power in each of them, brings it to that unitary consciousness state of mind, of being. So the movement to unitary consciousness is not for all incarnated souls in this lifetime. And I think sometimes aspirants forget that, because you want everyone to understand, and this relates to your attachments again. Like you look at people suffering and it's hard, but that was you some lifetimes ago. You went through that, and they have to go through it also. If you can do something to alleviate it, of course you can, but not everybody in this lifetime is to attain enlightenment. And so I guess there's something called survivor's guilt in a way. Like if somebody dies, and you survive, then you feel guilty about it. And I think there is a little bit of I want to attain enlightenment in this lifetime type of guilt that comes up also, because then you kind of feel like you're leaving people behind, and they're going to be in the world, and they're going to keep going on, and they're going to keep suffering, and that's their bad and not everybody is to attain enlightenment in this lifetime. So this is part of the practice of dispassion and kakab, to understand that about souls. Souls are at different levels, and to understand that you went through those same lessons. And if you understand you properly, even though the you that's manifested may look horrible and may be suffering, when you understand you, for them, it's their things to do list. It's what they have. There's something in there they have to learn to be able to evolve spiritually. It's not. It manifests as a punishment, because when one is ignorant of this mystical aspect of spirituality, then one takes it personally, and one feels like one is being punishment. And it is a punishment, maybe in society. Like society, you do something bad, they might have a law, so you have to go to jail for doing this bad thing, and so it's a punishment. But there are many people, as you know, Nelson Mandela and others, who come out of jail in a more sterling way than they went in, because they did not take it as a punishment, but as an opportunity to reflect and change the direction of their life, or change their approach to life. So mysticism is a desire to go back to the state of original being. Not everyone will have this desire at the same time. Okay, to be where you are, it's where you need to be in your own evolution, enjoying your divine sport, because this is all your creation. You're enjoying the happiness and the sadness. You're enjoying the good and the bad. But you should have an understanding of the shifts that must take place, and apply them if you want to be effective and attain enlightenment. That you have the capacity. So you have the capacity to experience psychological fearlessness, which is the death of egoism, spiritual celibacy, self-control, not compelled or impelled, universal love, purified will, and enlightenment. And that's just a little preview of what we're going to be doing in the meditation in a little bit. So the serpent power energy rises up, the unitary consciousness. So when the transition to unitary consciousness is complete, then the great awakening can occur. So if you saw, we had like two movements, right? We had the horizontal movement that you go from regular person, striving aspirant, advanced aspirant, unitary consciousness, and then there's the becoming established in each of the inner centers and it rising up. Okay, so that was the end of the presentation. So Shem Sekhmet, did I answer your question, most importantly? Or are there any other questions? Are there any questions related to wrongly? So if no questions, we'll go ahead and we'll conclude with the meditation. Hopefully I answered the question. A little bit of an involved answer, but just to give a little more sight into the are you. I didn't know if you could hear me, Shem Sekhmet Besrat, just to ask you if I answered the question or if you had any other further questions. You can type it in. That's probably going to be the easiest. Here, let's go back to the initial question. Okay. The initial question was, are we destined to live out the effects of our past? Are you, even if we purify and lighten our hearts in the present? So the answer to that was no. Um, that we do suffer consequences of our negative actions, despite the fact that we may have more positive RU, right? And the suffering the consequences of our negative actions is actually that RU is meant to teach us not to engage in those negative actions and not to do those negative actions. So it's to point out our error, really. So RU can become, it's like a learning tool or learning tool. So we do suffer consequences of our negative actions despite the fact that we may have positive RU now. Correct. So even enlightened stages will still have quote unquote adverse situations or challenges that they may face. And related to negative RU from the past that is fructifying. Remember, I said a portion will just become active for this lifetime, so that may be part of it to become active for this lifetime. But even them, when they have to deal with it, because they're not viewed in terms of negative and positive and bad and all of that, it's not having that like effect in them like pain and suffering, psychological pain and suffering related to it. And yes, positive RU cancels out negative impressions, and it does. And so the idea is to go from negative RU to positive RU, and then from positive RU to transcend RU altogether, to no RU. Okay, we'll do a, so me. Yes. This reminds me of your teaching that you recommended prior to the Serpent workshop regarding the highs and lows of life. Study during the high moments of life instead of partying and reflecting during the low moments. Yes. The low moments are a little bit more challenging, related to like if there's like a little bit of a mudslide, we have all these floods and the water is rushing down the mountain. If you're kind of going down the mountain, you're going to have an easier time, as long as the water is not rushing too much to sweep you away, but you're going to go with the flow. But if you're going up the mountain, then that's so like when there's prosperous times, like if you get into that flow of energy, you're going to be able to advance. And in the challenging times, it seems like you're not advancing because maybe there's some big situation that's occurring that you're dealing with, and you're trying to utilize your tools to keep your mind calm. You're trying to do your breathing. You're trying to pray. You're trying to, do your chant. So maybe you don't have time to do like a meditation because it's like, it's something that's compelling your time or something like that. And so you feel like you're really not growing spiritually, like you don't, it's not the same as when you're in the flow of things and you're like moving along in a good way. And you may not be able to meditate. I said maybe you don't have enough time to do this, or maybe you lose your temper, you're cool and you're wrestling with your ego and your personality. And in that time I related to like going uphill when against the water, so the water's coming down and you have to go uphill, say, to save someone, and you're like walking, and each step you're taking, like you're hardly making any headway. You're hardly, being able to climb, a couple of steps because the water is just pushing you back. And so it's like almost like you're moving in the same space, doing a lot of effort, expending a lot of energy, but you feel like you're not gaining. But that is an egoistic mind trick, so to speak, that you're not gaining. Because even if you think of the metaphor, what are you gaining there? You're gaining in physical strength, right? You're gaining in stamina. Your legs are gaining in strength and gaining in stamina. And if you were to stop that movement, you'd be swept away. So even though it seems like you're not making a lot of headway, if you stop it, you'll be swept away into egoism and into dejection and forlongness and all of these things. And not only that, if you sustain that your spiritual shedding to the degree that you can, to the degree you're able to sustain it, even in those challenging times, you are gaining in the Kent, and the Knumt. You're gaining in the spiritual valor. You become in a stronger personality. You become in braver, be able to endure, and that is actually that is the second energy, and that is the willpower also that's going to be manifested and rising through and integrated into the personality as well too. So it's positive in that way. So that's how it becomes also. It's like not a good or bad in terms of one's likes or dislikes, but in terms of how is it affecting my spiritual capacity to focus on my Shetty and my unitary consciousness. If it leads away from that, then that's adversity. If it leads to it, then it's prosperity, mystical spiritual prosperity. Okay, head tap. So I don't think there were any other questions, so we will conclude. So we'll do the meditation, and if you need to leave, that's fine. If you want to do your meditation quietly by yourself, you're welcome to. I'll just go over it very briefly. But hopefully, I think you've all been practicing, so hopefully so we're going to use serpentine thought visualization, the two serpents vibrating, undulating, coming up however fast you want them to go or slow. They're moving upwards and they turn inward at the third eye, at the sixth energy center, the Sephek Bara. They meet in the middle of the head, become one, Wajet, symbolic of the anointing and the attainment of spiritual enlightenment. So we're going to do our concentration phase where we're trying to gather the mind, and we're going to visualize the cauldron and the basket of set at the base of the spine. We're going to breathe in, see the dual serpents rise up, meet at the sixth energy center, go to the seventh, and then the umbrella-like movement to the projected sixth. And we're going to take a moment when we do that, as we advance in the procedure, we're going to not be focused so much on the air. We're going to have enough air, and when we inhale and we bring it all the way over, we're going to take a moment in that pause in a natural way and just let it flow in a natural inhalation pause, not holding and forcefully holding, just allowing it to stay. Sometimes it feels like a little bit of suspended animation, and remember, in that pause where there's no breathing, where the life force energy is still, it allows one to get a little glimpse, a little taste of the transcendental. And then we're going to exhale back from the seventh, from the sixth, the projected sixth, the serpent that's projected through the third eye, back to the seventh, then 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then when we get down, we tap. Remember, we do the tap and rest, Mhetep, awaken in peace. Ignore these on the side. There's just all discarded notes since I'm showing it in this mode. So we're going to inhale up, Rasuthatepti, awaken in the non-duality, the vision of non-duality, and then we're going to rest on a tap, awaken in peace. And then the other one we talked about was we stopped the umbrella movement and we just moved the life force energy between 1 and 7 up. Inhale up to 7, And then allow that natural pause, that little suspended animation, and then exhale down to 1, and then tap, and then you can allow that little suspended animation too at the exhalation. So just inhale. You can, I think I have it here as inhale into 6. So you can inhale to 6 or inhale to 7. If you inhale to 6, then the serpents would meet at 6, or otherwise you can go all the way up to 7. Again, whichever feels more comfortable for you, your personal preference. And then we talked about the breath of the goddess one, where you can have the visualization of goddess Sekhmet there, touching your nose, her nose to your nose. She's breathing life force energy into you. And you can chant the rest Tap for the inhalation and the exhalation for this one, to awaken in peace. And she breathes out, and her out breath is your in breath. She fills you up with the life force energy and your entire being. And then you exhale, you keep the life force energy in you, and you exhale all the impurities, and she burns them up, purifies them, and then she breathes life force energy back into you. And then with this one, you're going to do the tap in motion. Inhale to 7, exhale down to Sepak Bara 1, and you're gently going to tap the serpent. So you're going to inhale to 7 and exhale down. And this one also is good if you have a challenge with the breath, if you feel it's too long to hold the breath for the other movements. So inhale to 7, exhale down to 1, and then you tap, and then you do the reverse. Inhale up to 7. And again, you can have that suspended animation, that brief pause, and then exhale to Sekhmet. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll begin. And again, not holding the breath, not straining the breath, but using the natural pauses. And if you do feel like getting a little deeper into those pauses in a natural way, in a suspended animation type of way for a moment, to like embrace the stillness that's there, you can do so, but not in a way of forcing or straining or anything like that. Okay. So sitting with your spine straight. Or laying on your back. Inhale up. Rasuthatapti. Exhale down. Restam tap tap. Inhale. Rasuthatapti up. Exhale. Restam tap. So according to whichever meditation you want to do, we'll just start with a little bit of the chant. Restam tap. That's down for the tap. Rasuthatapti. That is up. Inhale and out. For the awakening vision at the 6th energy center. Restam tap. That is going down to tap at the base of the spine. Tapping the cobra gently in our head. Vasudhatapti. Inhalation, upward movement. Rastam hatap. Exhalation, downward movement. And then according to whichever technique to continue. The main technique is inhaling up. Inhale into the first energy center. Continue to inhale up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The dual serpents, they meet at 6. Unitary consciousness arises and then projected up to 7 and over to 6. And then exhale. 6, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and tap. And then inhale up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The dual serpents meet at 6. Unitary consciousness rises up to 7 and then projects out in the Akushepsu projection of the sage that operate out of the 6th energy center. In here as an image of the serpent in the brow, or between the eyebrows. And so continue. As you inhale up, Vasudhatapti. As you exhale down, Rastamhatap.
Unmuted.
Restam Hatap. Rasut Yaturtam Hatap. Rasut Hatapti. 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 Om Hatap, 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 Hatap. Officially concludes. Peace and blessings.